Joseph Parker versus Fabio Wardley is upon us, and in this video I'm going to be breaking down the tactical details that could define the outcome of this fight. We're going to be taking a look at Fabio Wardley and how a few very specific things that he does promote chaos and enable him to make the most of his devastating power. We're going to look at how this matches up against Joseph Parker and what Joseph Parker can do to mitigate this and have his own success in the fight. These are heavyweights. This fight could very much be on a knife edge. It could go either way because both of these guys are going to be looking for the knockout. And so these details could make all the difference. Hello everyone and welcome back to A Guy Called Henry. I hope you're all doing extremely well. Right before I jump in guys, and I've got a good one for you today. I've seen some really interesting stuff in these two fighters that I think could decide the fight. I want you to bang a like on the video if you like it. Subscribe to A Guy Called Henry if you're new. And let me know what you think tactically and technically in the comments below about these two fighters. Have I seen everything, or do you think there's a few things in there that maybe I've missed? Maybe I've missed the whole point of this fight. But this is how I see it matching up technically and tactically. Also, guys, please consider using my link in the description to buy this fight on DAZN. I genuinely think this is going to be an incredibly explosive, incredibly exciting fight. And if you use my link to buy the fight, you help to support the channel. I get a little share of the pay-per-view revenue, but it'll cost you exactly the same. So I'd really appreciate if you would consider that. Now, in part one of this video, we're going to be analyzing and assessing what I call the Fabio Wardley kill zone. And this is the makeup of what makes Fabio Wardley in recent times such a devastating fighter. He's got a few very specific techniques that he uses that enable him to go and knock out his opponents. I'm going to give you 3 different techniques, and the way I would describe these techniques is they are the things that grant Fabio Wardley permission to go into his chaos mode. The chaos mode I'm referring to is when he goes absolutely crazy, he blitzes his opponents and absolutely smashes them, knocking them out or down. But there are very specific things that have to happen first before he truly feels comfortable doing this. And these things all result in his opponent being hurt. They're hurt, they're on the retreat, and that's when he'll go for you. The first technique I'm going to show you is the Fabio Wardley pull counter. Now, I have to say the thing that for me that really defines Fabio Wardley and the thing that makes him so dangerous is his willingness to be in danger himself at most times in the fight. It's this understanding he has that in order to be successful, in order to land what he can do well, he needs to be hit or at least at risk of being hit. It's what makes him such an incredible heavyweight. It's what has allowed him to overcome his lack of amateur schooling. He's so damn brave. He's a proper warrior. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that here. So as I say, the first technique is the pull counter. You can see there's a good gap between them. And Wardley is watching what Adelaide is doing here. This was in the David Adelaide fight. And David Adelaide comes in here. He throws the jab. And as you can see, he does actually make contact with Fabio Wardley here. But Fabio Wardley's pulling back at the same time. You see the way he's arched his back like that. So he's taken the sting off the shot. And instantly his first thought here, and this is what he's looking to do, he wants you to throw first, is come back over the top with the right hand. And he clocks Adelaide there with a big right hand. You see it again here in the Fraser Clark fight with Fraser Clark leading off. So Fraser Clark is closing the gap here. He steps in with the jab. Wardley pulls his head back and he's looking for that pull counter. And the right hand comes over the top and he clocks Clark clean on the chin. And as I mentioned before, these moments, if he hurts you enough, if he deems you to be in enough pain, these are the moments that lead to the chaos, to the wildness. And this was the moment where he actually knocked Fraser Clark down in their first encounter. The second technique I'm going to show you is when he gets his head off the line and throws a right hand counter when his opponent throws a 1-2. So you can see here again in the first Fraser Clark fight, again, a good gap between them. They both have their stance. They're both in shape. Fraser Clark here, he steps in with the lead hand. And the second, you can see the second he goes, watch his foot here. The second that foot goes, he steps in, Wardley approaches himself. And look, the second he starts going, you can see that right hand comes in here. The jab has gone past Wardley's shoulder there because Wardley's moved his head off to the side. And he's instantly winding up that right hand. And boom, he hits Fraser Clark clean in the head. The other time that we saw this was in Wardley's KO of Huni, most recently. As you can see here, Huni, he's bouncing. He takes that step into the pocket, that leap into the pocket. And this was the only time in the fight that Huni actually did this, where he led off. And we'll talk about this. We'll talk about how Parker can learn from the Huni fight. And I don't know why for the life of me Huni did this. But anyway, he went in, he extended his lead hand. He didn't land the jab, though. He was looking to set up the right hand here very clearly. As that right hand goes in, you can see Wardley's looking at the right hand the whole time. That's his vision there. He's on that right hand. And he instantly executes exactly the same technique. The right hand comes in, he gets his head off the line, and boom, he absolutely nails Huni on the chin. And Huni gets knocked down and knocked out.
All sorts of heavyweight.
The third technique I want to show you, and again, it's something, as I said before, it gives him permission to absolutely go for you if it works and hurts you enough. And it's the guard pull down. And it was something Frazer Clarke, you'd think he would have learned from this. In fact, he actually offered up a pretty good solution to it that I'll show you in a bit. But this was in the first fight. You can see Wardley's circling around here, and he's looking for the opportunity to latch onto this extended lead arm from Frazer Clarke. So as he circles round, he steps in, and you see it there. He's hooked the lead hand of Frazer Clarke. And from there, he fires in his right hand straight down the middle. Nice big shot there. And a left hook falls in as well. And then, of course, in the second Frazer Clarke fight, Wardley was able to execute this technique again. As you can see, a good gap between them. Again, you know, there's always space when Fabio Wardley does these things. It's not really inside work. There have been moments on the inside where, you know, his opponents have got lazy. I think of the Adelaide knockout where he's in the pocket and he swings a big shot in, and Adelaide was indisciplined on the break and he got caught. But generally speaking, it's when he's got space to operate. It's when he sees you moving in on him, or when he's sort of within range of you and he can manipulate your guard. As you can see here, he takes the step in, pulls Frazer Clarke's guard down there, and he steps in behind that with this right hand over the top that catches Frazer Clarke on the temple. And of course, from there, Fabio Wardley goes absolutely crazy. He sets about Frazer Clarke and ends up catching him with some massive right hands and actually breaking Frazer Clarke's skull. It was a truly devastating knockout. Frazer Clarke would have been kicking himself for even getting caught with the initial shot that kind of set the whole thing in motion. But after that, God, that was an absolutely brutal knockout. And look, there are other moments when Fabio Wardley will go into that wild mode. You know, if he's particularly hurt and he needs to show you something, sometimes he'll just absolutely go for you. And they're not the only techniques that he uses in the ring to try and get to his opponent. You know, he will stab to the body to give his opponent something to think about. Often on the break or to finish up a combination, he'll land these really powerful, fast hooks to the body. But generally speaking, watching a lot of Fabio Wardley, these are the techniques he really looks to use to initiate those phases where he then tries to take you out. Sometimes, you know, especially with the shot where he gets his head off the line, it's enough to ice you with one punch. But generally speaking, these are things that start moments for him where it begins the retreat for the opposition, and then he can really attack you and go for it because he knows you're hurt and he knows you're not going to be as good at counterpunching in that moment. He can kind of afford to go wild if his opponent's a little more hurt. So I suppose the question is, how does that match up against what Joseph Parker does? Are these things that I think will get to Joseph Parker? I think they certainly can be if Joseph Parker isn't very much aware of them. You know, I think the things I've seen from Joseph Parker that trouble me in this sense, he sometimes can find himself sitting in the pocket a little bit too long, right in front of his opponent. I'm only going to look at sort of more recent history when making this analysis of him, because I do think he's evolved as a fighter. The furthest I'll go back here is the Joe Joyce fight, and for sure in that one, Parker says he was ill before the fight, and assuming he was telling the truth when he said that, to caveat any analysis in that fight, he was obviously sick and didn't have his normal energy levels. But there was definitely moments where he moved back in straight lines too much, where he was caught by big shots from Joe Joyce and was just sitting in the pocket for a bit too long. Again, we saw it in the Zhilei Zhang fight where Parker was moving around the ring very nicely. He did a good job in that fight, but early on he did get caught by a big straight left hand from Zhilei Zhang. And again, it was because Parker was not reactive enough. He was caught in the pocket. He got hit clean. After that, he certainly shaped up much nicer, and we're going to have a look at that. But for sure, there are moments where Parker sits in the pocket a bit too long. And he does alter the position of his lead hand. Sometimes he's in a high guard. Sometimes he's using, you know, a lower hand to fire off the jab. And I do think that that stance in particular, if he's not moving and if he's not alert, could be a problem for that guard pull down that Wardley does. And, you know, Wardley will pile forward, slinging big shots. So sitting static as a static target in the pocket is something I don't really want to see Parker doing too much. So I suppose the question is, how do you deal with these things that Fabio Wardley does? And then how do you weaponize this kill zone, as I have referred to it as, against Fabio Wardley? So I've got two golden rules here. In fact, no, I've got three. I've got three golden rules here that Joseph Parker's going to need to follow to win this fight comfortably. And some of them he already does. So actually, I'm not that worried about him in that sense. But he's got to make sure that he's as sharp as ever. And I do worry about the ring rust a little bit. I mean, these are topics that I will discuss in my final prediction video. But there's a few concerns I have about Parker that aren't necessarily tactical. And that's what this video is about. So we'll stick with that for now. But the first thing that you have to do with Fabio Wardley is you've got to force him to lead off. And it's an interesting one because I've heard some people saying, Wardley's got to go in there. He's got to absolutely stick it on Joseph Parker. But I don't see it quite like that. I actually think that that's not the right thing to do. I think if you are Fabio Wardley and I think if you are Joseph Parker, both of them will want the other man to lead off so that they can make them pay. And look, the thing about Wardley is he offers it up. It's an inviting thing when he's standing there with his hand so low, knowing that you can get to him. He wants you to do that. because he wants to feel that you've touched him so he can touch you right back with more power than what you've hit him with. So I'm going to jump over to this Justis Huni fight just to break down for you the mechanics of this, because Huni was completely destroying Fabio Wardley. He was completely outboxing him. And it was really one mistake from Huni that led to that knockout, as I mentioned earlier. It was the only time in the fight, and I've watched this back slow motion. It was one of the only times in the entire fight that Justis Huni led off with his right hand like that. I mean, I don't know why he did it. I really, really don't know why he did it, but everything he was doing was working, and there's some really great lessons that Parker can take from this performance. As I say, the first thing is let Wardley lead off, and I'll show you an example of it here, so watch. Huni is walking Wardley down here, and this is the thing as well, what I will say about Huni is that he did a really amazing job of working Wardley, but not actually working with punches a lot of the time. He was in front of Wardley, he was feinting, he was moving around, but he was letting Wardley throw first, and then he was attacking Wardley after Wardley had already fired off his own shot. It was essentially a really good come forward counter-punching display. So you see here, Wardley fires out the jab. The second he does that, Huni gets his head off the line. So the jabs come out here, Huni's got his head off the line here, and instantly you can see this shot coming around. He cracks him in the side of the head there. And off the back of that, he can then, move in and throw more combinations. Again here, you see a simple jab from Fabio Wardley punch. He's got his hand in that low position. He jabs up, and Wardley Huni just pulls his head ever so slightly off in this direction. So the jab doesn't hit him, and boom, he comes straight back with his own shot. Another jab, a big right hand, and it's a beautiful counter-punching combination. And another one here, just to show you an example. Again, you can see Wardley, he's ready to use the lead hand. He fires it out. Huni gets his head off to the side here, and he fires back with his own straight lead, and he cracks Wardley there. And you can go back and watch the fight. There's many examples of this. There's many examples of Huni letting Wardley fire first and then getting his own work off. And generally speaking, Huni would only go to the head first when Wardley had already given him something to counter off. Now, this is the second part of how you deal with Fabio Wardley. This is rule number 2. And it's you've always got to use level changes if indeed you do decide I'm going to lead off. And this happened on countless occasions in the Justis Huni fight. Now in this one, Huni's actually working off Wardley's work again, but it's this principle of level changes. Go low, go high. And it's such a simple thing. And Huni did it to perfection in this fight, but seemingly by starting low with Wardley and finishing high, he really struggled to deal with it in this fight. And it's actually something Parker does well. I'll show you in a moment. Watch this. So Huni, he comes in here, and Wardley, he's trying to jab him to the head, but Huni gets underneath it. See the arm goes straight over there. Huni jabs to the body. And then from there, he brings it up high with the same hand. And one of the reasons I like that so much, if we go back, is because he jabs low, right? And let's suppose that Wardley, was prepared for that low shot or a shot to the head or whatever with the lead hand. If he wants to throw that right hand and let it go, because Huni's used the same hand again, twice here, I'm going to beat it up the middle. I really like that. I think the use of the lead hand here could be quite key for Joseph Parker. Rather than throwing 1-2s, I think with the jab, the left hook, I think that's a nice combination. Again here with this level change, watch what Huni does. So he dips down, and you can see Wardley starts loading up that right hand, but he bottles it, and Huni chucks in the right hand to the body, which doesn't land clean, but it allows him to then fire upstairs with the left hand. Again, it's body head. And I'm going to show you another example of this that I really enjoy. Watch here. So Huni, he steps in, and this is him. This very much is him leading off. There's no shot. There's no shot he's countering off here. He steps in. He jabs low to the body. And, I think that because of the way that Wardley fights on the line, because he likes to pull back, do the pull counter, all that sort of stuff, get his head off the line, I think if you do hit him to the body, he struggles to find the balance to then fire back with that right hand. So I do think starting to the body is actually pretty key. But you can see he fires low and then he fires high. You can see that right hand is ready to go. Boom, he hits him clean on the chin. And look, if Huni could punch harder, I'm quite sure that he would have knocked out Fabio Wardley. As tough as Fabio Wardley is, I never thought that Justis Huni was much of a puncher at all. In fact, I think he's probably one of the lighter punchers in the heavyweight division at the top level. So yes, working up and down is something that's absolutely key. It's the safest and most effective way to attack Fabio Wardley, to initiate the exchanges. And there were so many examples of Huni doing this well in this fight. I mean, it really was nearly all the successful combinations he had. He was going body, going head, body, and it was just really great to see. Another habit that I'll quickly mention here is that Wardley does often, when you jab him to the face, and in a couple of other scenarios, he does dip to the right a lot. And there was a few times in this fight where Justis Huni would absolutely crack him with a right hook and then a left hook as Fabio Wardley dipped down to the other direction. At the very least, he'd use the right hook to sort of frame him, keep him in that dipped right position, then he'd crack him in the head. And yeah, it was something Huni did really effectively in this fight. We saw it in the Clark fight a little bit as well. So that's something for Joseph Parker to keep an eye on, a specific technical detail. And my third and final rule here, really, for Joseph Parker to follow that Justis Huni showed us beautifully was, well, except for one moment in the fight, was if you are going to lead off, if you are going to throw these counter punches, especially if you're throwing a counter right hand, you've got to get your head off the line. You cannot be throwing it square. We saw in the knockout what happened when Huni threw it square for the first time in the fight. But you see in this example here, again, Wardley's just going to jab here. He just goes to jab, and at the same time, Huni lines up the right hand, and his head comes across this way. So even if, Fabio Wardley decided he's throwing his backhand, I'm going to throw mine and counter him, Huni's head was way too far outside. Watch. As he throws it, he cracks him clean, and his head has gone from here to here. So even if Wardley was trying to counter him, it'd be very, very difficult, and he hits him with a real clean punch there. See the sweat fly in the air. It's a really, really clean shot. So how do I think Joseph Parker does all those things? Well, I think that he does move very well these days. I think his use of lateral movement has certainly increased since he joined Andy Lee. We saw it in the Zhile Zhang fight, the way he moved around the ring, the way he uses constant feints and head movement. It's a lot slower than the way that Huni does it. He definitely doesn't have the foot speed that Huni has. He's quite a bit heavier than Huni, and weight is an interesting thing to talk about, which we will discuss in the prediction video. But I think he has the ability to move around the ring and defensively keep himself safe. Needless to say, something Huni did really well in this fight was his defense was just great. Every time Wardley would go forward with a double jab and try and throw wild shots, he just moved around and blocked it all with a high guard. I think that the base defensive park has to be good, but that's an obvious thing to say. But in avoiding that kill zone and avoiding those three setups I showed you, I think Huni did a great job of avoiding all of them except for in that one moment, and he got completely taken out because of it. I also think that Parker does a really good job of level changes as well. Again, we saw that in the Zhang fight. We saw that in the Bakole fight as well, the way he went to the body with those jabs, the way he would then go up top. And the other thing we saw that was demonstrated beautifully in that Bakole fight was how he gets his head off the line when he throws the right hand. And I know that Bakole was really overweight in that fight and unfit, but it was only the second round. He didn't even go for a round and a half. And even though Bakole was a lot heavier than he normally is, he's always that open. He's someone who's very hittable. There's every chance that Parker might have knocked him out no matter what shape he came into the fight at. We couldn't find out much about it because at the end of the day, Bakole couldn't fight with the same output as normal. But in terms of the way Parker executed the techniques, I found it quite encouraging in terms of what I think he needs to do against Fabio Wardley. And I think the thing I want to have a quick look at here is how do you deal with that guard pull down? It was the shot he used against Frazer Clarke in the second fight that completely destroyed him. It was something he wasn't really able to do against Huni because Huni's feet were so fast, and I do wonder if it's something he could maybe use against Parker. So let's look at how Clarke did actually manage to mitigate it in their first fight. The reason I wanted to show you this here is because first I think it's a relevant strategy for Parker to think about how he's going to counteract it, but also it's a lot of getting your head off the line as well. But watch here. It's exactly the same as in the second fight. It's just this time Clarke actually reacts quickly. So watch. He brings out his lead hand here, Wardley. He's reaching for that lead hand of Frazer Clarke. He grabs it. As you can see, he hooks it. Now, the difference here is that Clarke instantly reacts the right way. Watch what Clarke does. The second he grabs it and pulls it down, he lets his weight go with it, and he brings his head off this way, and he throws the right hand at the same time. So watch. His head comes across. Fabio Wardley's own right hand's missing, and he catches Wardley clean on the chin, and his shot goes over Frazer Clarke's shoulder. That is a mess of a nose. I mean, and this is something it's going to open up again in this Parker fight. It does every fight now, and it's a mess. That scar he's got on his nose, it just opens up. He bleeds everywhere. But you'll see here, he comes across, and rather than going for Clarke's lead hand this time, you can see he just looks to hook the backhand there. And again, the second he pulls it down, Clarke does the right thing. He gets his head off the line and fires that right hand down the middle. And again, he catches, you see there, he catches him perfectly. His shot goes over there. His shot hits him bang on the chin. It's a monster right hand from Frazer Clarke there. So he must have been absolutely kicking himself when he got hit with that shot. Right at the start of their second fight, he already knew what to do with it as well. And when you're fresh and sharp, you shouldn't be letting him get away with that. But it does show you the speed with which Wardley can actually get into your space and land that right hand. And that is the sort of Deontay Wilder-esqueness about him. And it's not that he does it exactly the same way, but it's the sheer power that right hand carries. The fact that, as I've described him before, Wardley, he is this moment's fighter. And so mitigating those moments is your first port of call. So hopefully I've shown you there that I actually have a great deal of respect for the way Fabio Wardley goes about things. He does a few things very, very well. He's taught himself a few techniques that have allowed him to make the most of his power and operate at a pretty high level. And I think these will work on anybody if they're not aware that they're happening. I think that is true. I really do believe that. Now, there's actually more Wardley susceptibilities and weaknesses that I think can be taken advantage of. For example, I think that when you make him lead off, if you keep the range, then he does tend to overreach, with his lead hand, which allows him to lean forward. And in the Clark fight, he was getting hit with a lot of uppercuts because of that. And also, I do think there is a bit of a susceptibility to left hooks there. You know, I think the way that Huni was able to double up on the left side, keeping him safe, but also landing those lead left hooks, I think that was very impressive. I remember Adelaide was able to land a couple of left hooks as well. Having seen the way Parker used that left hook against Zhang, it's a different dynamic for sure, because Zhang's a southpaw, so you are essentially going over the front hand. You know, he's thrown a jab, Parker's made a miss, and then he's come over the top with those hooks. It's a slightly different dynamic with Wardley, but the amount he uses that right hand, I do think that those counter left hooks could well be on for him. And look, I can really understand people watching this and saying, you know, Henry, you've only really focused on Fabio Wardley here and what he does that Parker can take advantage of. And it's unfortunate, but I think this is the way I see the fight. In all honesty, I think it's these three factors, these three setups that he uses. If he can't get those off against Parker, I really don't think that he can outbox Parker. My perspective on the Huni fight was that Huni neutralized all of those things. And if you go for that fight, there really isn't much to say that's good about Fabio Wardley. There isn't anything to say he did well. He landed that shot in the moment when Huni finally made that mistake. So the crux of this video is, can Parker stop those three things from happening? I believe he's got the ability to do so, but I also think, you know, he is someone who is heavier these days. He plants his feet more. I do think there's more opportunities against a Parker for Fabio Wardley to land his work than there was against a Justis Huni, for example. These are tactical implications. We're going to discuss what this all means, how this all fits together, and what the likelihood of these things happening is, in my opinion, in my prediction video that will be out before the fight. But that is how I see the tactical makeup of this one. I'd love to know how you guys see it in the comments section below. Can Wardley operate in the kill zone? Can he lure Parker into one of these setups? Will Parker hold his feet a bit too long and Wardley will be able to just, you know, jump on him, throw big, heavy shots, just absolutely go for him? These are all things that are worth discussing and worth trying to figure out. And the big question is, who is going to win this fight? Is someone going to score a knockout? Well, I'll be making that prediction for you in my next video. So I hope to see you all there. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end, guys. If you have done, please use my link in the description to buy the fight. Don't forget to smash a like on the video. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if indeed you're new. Thanks so much, guys. And as I always say, on to the next one.